This episode of the podcast is sponsored by my book, We Stand on the Shoulders of Titans, Amnesia. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of The Grammar of Decline. I'm joined here today by my co host Dave and a friend of the show, Mike. Today, we're going to be going into the details of the institutions and the problems regarding institutions in the view of Roger Scruton, who was very influenced by Edmund Burke when it came to the society and how it is held together by authority, the rule of law, in the sense of the right to obedience and not the imagined rights of citizens. So, Dave, have you done your homework?
Oh, indeed I have. It's quite an in-depth video, and they touched on a lot of things that I want to understand, like totalitarian government, how the Nazis took over universities, the pursuit of truth overall, kind of thing, and what that means for institutional forgetting, and what you wrote about.
So, Mike, do you know anything about Roger Scruton or do you know anything about this idea?
Yeah, other than his name and the fact that he's an academic, no.
So Roger Scruton is someone that back in the 50s, 60s did a PhD in social studies. During this time, he was actually a leftist, like what is modernly known as someone on the left, like a socialist, liberal, that type of idea. And during the 80s, he witnessed essentially the riots in France. This is very similar to Edmund Burke. Edmund Burke, way back in the 17th and 1800s, or 18th century, he also observed what happened during the French Revolution, which eventually grew out towards the cult of reason, which is where, Robespierre and the people around him started justifying, basically using the guillotine to just get rid of everyone that didn't agree or was not in line with the ideology of the system.
Basically, not very reasonable then.
Basically. And this is something that grew out towards what is now modernly known as communism. Karl Marx was someone who wrote about the bourgeois, which is what the movement back in France was, the bourgeois, and he called it a bourgeois half measure. The idea was then that instead of just taking out, quote unquote, the elite or just people who didn't really fall in line, he argued that anyone that didn't fall in line could be get rid of. And Roger Scruton in the early 2000s went on multiple seminars talking about certain topics in regards towards forgetting and taking over institutions and controlling the narrative. And this is very similar to what we saw with the French Revolution, where they started controlling the narrative and they motivated people to burn all the books and burn everything to do with Christianity. They took over the calendar and replaced the calendar, instead of like using Christian dates, replacing it with French dates instead, like completely nationalizing and taking over the whole system. Very similar to what the Nazis did before the Second World War and during the Second World War.
Wait, they did a new calendar in Germany as well.
Yeah, they took their own system, like for everything.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know they did that.
I thought everything was quite universal with the Mayan calendar. I thought we kind of all aligned to the Mayan calendar.
No, isn't that just because like the whole doomsday thing with the Mayan calendar? But that was a completely separate one.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm getting confused here.
We're following
no, because it's like the Mayan calendar was a big deal in 2012 because that's when the Mayan calendar ended.
Yeah, I mean that came out of nowhere. The Mayan calendar is not something I was expecting to hear.
That's me educated on that then.
Yeah, but that's because the Mayan calendar only went up to 2012.
No, at least related to the 2012 film, and
it just became a meme because you remember like with Y2K, you say, "Oh, the world was going to end," and like we lived through that, and they said the world's going to end in 2012 because the Mayan calendar ends. Then it's like, I mean, sure. Same thing. Same. Last time I checked, I'm still alive, and it's 2025. So I'm pretty sure. We're all good.
Yeah. So this whole ideology lives on today. In my country, last week, the higher school in Utrecht decided that all Christian names or holidays would be replaced with naturally state-owned names, neutral names, just calling it a national holiday. Very similar to how George Orwell warned about the Ministry of Truth, replacing everything with duck speak. So that's one of the sides that has been a result of what's been going on for now, well, 2 centuries. And Roger Scruton was very much a traditionalist, someone very much inspired by Edmund Burke. And he's taken that a step further with the institutions. So for my entire work, I look at Will Durant. And Will Durant was someone who looked at the work of Edward Gibbon in his Decline of the Roman Empire. And he went specifically for the institutions, how institutions lose their focus, how institutions lose their ideology, how institutions lose what is important. And from Dave's homework, one of the important things that Roger Scruton spoke about was the fact that a lot of these universities now are ideologically captured by studies that actually make no sense whatsoever, have no value to society whatsoever. They're just there.
Is this like when they talked about like women's studies and things like that?
Yeah, like women's studies in themselves have value, but current modern women's studies, same way with the way Roger Scruton described it, was that these women's studies, you have to be part of a certain ideology to even be able to join that whole study, because you need to already be
I
ideology
think,
captured.
yeah, I think I could do it because I can add to that because you've got like medical women's studies, which you had women react differently to drugs than to men. It's like it used to be, wasn't it like penicillin or something wasn't tested on women, so it was completely useless on them or something like that. Or I'm probably getting mixed up, but there have been studies like that done which show that women react a different way to men in various medical aspects. So that kind of like women's studies is useful, but the kind that they're doing is just like like it's basically arguing against patriarchy or something like that, which is just something completely useless and nonsensical. Would that be a good way of describing it, or not?
I mean, you're going into the medical field now, and there is a biological difference when it comes to how men and women react to certain drugs, but it's not
Is there not a
better.
neurological difference as well?
Yeah.
To
No,
actually,
what I'm doing is just like the differences between the two. It's like you got women's studies
Like that.
in a medical sense, and then women's studies, like quote unquote.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, which is it's more like gender studies, where it's just like
That too. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I could see a point for like gender study because you can see like how men and women react to different social stimuli. Because again, there's a difference there. But the way it's done here, it's just done to propagandize as opposed to you're not learning anything useful, basically. There's no. It's one of those. It's like factual but not truthful. So they're basically turning stats and figures into something that is just utter bullshit, basically.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
way to describe it.
I mean, he mentioned the pursuit of truth. So what was that about?
The pursuit of truth. One of the key doctrines when it comes to universities is that at all times you are responsible for researching and finding out the absolute truth. So when you talk about science, the way it is originally meant to be, you're looking at things where you find the truth. Like, for example, with gravity, probably the best example, right? Where an apple falls from a tree and it lands on the man's head. And he's like, oh, now I need to find out why does this happen. And he goes into an entire philosophical and scientific debate with himself, and then going through the hard work of mathematics to justify his entire thesis, right? This is the pursuit of truth, where you're actually doing everything you can to make the world a better place. That's basically the best way to say it.
Try to find things out.
Exactly. Whereas what we see with a lot of studies nowadays in my country as well, these are studies that have no value whatsoever. So let's say you get a study about gender studies. You will then become a bachelor educate. So you have a bachelor's degree with the value of an elementary school student. Basically meaning you get a job at Starbucks.
Probably worse. Yeah, probably worse because you can at least learn something when you're in elementary school.
I mean, there's probably something useful about learning something in these studies, but more often than not, it's just an ideology. What you're being taught is an ideology. At that stage, you're no longer pursuing the truth. You're pursuing an ideology. and at that stage,
Mm.
you've lost the plot. That's the best way to describe it, right? Like you're no longer engaging with what made a university a university. You're now just engaging with whatever ideology is being fed to you, and you're just doubling down on it. And whenever someone doesn't agree with your ideology, you're picking a fight with everyone that you see.
That's a thing to think of as well. It's like the science is never settled, is it?
Yeah, it's not. It's always
So
evolving.
yeah, so whenever you heard people like during COVID saying, "Oh, the science has been, the science has settled on this,"
It wasn't.
they're talking out their arse. And as it turns out, everyone who was saying that was found out to be either wrong or a liar. So yeah, and so basically, the sign of it. Someone told me ages. I can't remember who it was, but someone told me ages ago. The sign of a good scientist is someone who says, "I don't know,"
That's
because. Yeah, because you the whole point of it is the pursuit of truth, pursuit of knowledge, right?
Yep.
So if you say there's nothing more to learn, that's pretty anti-science because there's always something to learn, isn't there?
Yeah. Even in gravity.
Always.
Like you don't see people jumping off a cliff because they understand gravity is a real thing, but even in gravity, there's always something to learn. Just look at black holes. Black holes are completely absorbed by gravity scientists because it's such a complex mechanic that works there, and we can only observe it from far right now, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, even in physics, I mean, the introduction of quantum physics has
Yep.
completely changed the game field, and I'm no quantum scientist, but, you can only go by what you hear, and people are saying, like, things that happen in quantum physics is just changes the whole view that they take upon that
I've
science.
got one as well. It's like a more simple one would be circuit. If I flip a switch, well, I know the light's going to come on, but I don't know how circuits work and all the the specific materials that go in it. But there's always improvements going in there all the time, isn't there? There's new discoveries, so you end up it makes a circuit more long lasting, maybe. So I don't have to change my light bulb. I don't have to change the light bulb as often. I don't know the specifics behind it, but I know how it works because that's been imparted over years in school, basically.
Yeah. I think it brings up like the interesting theories, like what is it, Schrodinger's cat?
Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah. I mean that's kind of that blows my mind, kind of thing. That theory, you know what I mean? How it can be two things at once until the box is opened, right? So there's no concrete evidence in it until something actually becomes an absolute truth.
Yeah, and even
that's always gone over my head, though. To be honest, I mean, I don't. It's like I think just quantum physics just goes over my head completely because I don't get how something could exist in two states at once.
Yeah.
But I just don't think my mind can grasp it because I'm just too stupid to get it. It's like other things like things like time dilation. It's like when you get closer to a source of like heavy gravity, it makes time go. I was like, how I don't know how that works. How could that possibly work? I don't see it. I'm just like, eh. I've had friends of mine explain it to me loads of times, and I still don't get it. Maybe if I get a scientist to explain it to me, I'll get it one day. But I have no clue.
Yeah, I think for me again, it's beyond my brain power to actually comprehend it, what's going on as well. So I just rely on people explaining it to me as best they can.
I don't even get that much.
Definitely. But I mean, in Roger Scruton, I mean, what is he analysing about the universities? I know he was mentioning about the Nazi taking over universities.
Oh, that's something I mentioned a bit earlier, right? Like the changing of the calendar, for example, where you went into the Mayan calendar side of things.
Yep.
Like
a stupid moment, maybe a blonde moment from me.
That was a distraction.
That was a distraction right there, yeah.
That was a curveball, right? I was seeing if you were paying attention.
So they didn't change the Gregorian calendar, which is the 12 months with 365 to 360 days. That's something we still all use today. but they modified the observance of holidays, like Heroes Memorial Day, I believe, was celebrated on the 16th of March. You had National Labor Day on the 1st of May. Mother's Day in May, that was something they added. Summer solstice in June, yeah. And the harvest.
We're about to hit that on October, are we not? No, that's summer solstice. That's where the sun and the longest day
you can thank the
and the
Nazis for
longest
that
night.
because it's their holiday.
All right,
Why
okay.
did they
And
do
harvest
that?
Thanksgiving.
Why do they do that?
And winter solstice. It's just a manipulation of like if you think about 1984, right? If you think about the controlling of information, the controlling of narrative, there's a lot of things. For example, the changing of time zones. Why do we do it? We don't need it, but we do it anyway. It's because during the Nazi occupation, there was good reasoning to use it because of the electricity. Like having that extra hour saves on like electricity usage. Like there were reasons here and there that was good for using certain things, but for the rest, it was very into the idea of the years of terror.
Isn't it less saving and more just offsetting it to a different hour instead?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reasons why we do it today, from what I hear, is because we want more daylight. You know, we want to get a bit of a longer day. Whereas if we didn't do
get up an hour earlier, then you know.
Yeah, that was the logic with electricity, right? Like if you don't need to turn on the lights for an extra hour, that saves a lot, especially during that time, right?
Yeah, but
right, okay,
is it like I said? Isn't that just offsetting it to a different time? Because it's going to be another hour further down the line where everyone's turning on the light then.
Yeah, but that's why we also change the clock again. We do it twice a year.
Yeah, but I think it's just shifting things around pointlessly at that point. It's always just annoyed me.
It's funny because apparently it mucks up your internal clock as well.
Yeah, there's been scientific evidence that shows that I'm one of them, by the way, that 30% of the population has really struggles by changing the clock that significantly out of nowhere. And the European Union passed a law in 2019, so this is 6 years ago, for all the countries to get rid of it. But in a modern democracy, we're more obsessed with speaking than doing. Everything just became empty words, and we're still stuck with this whole system. Like, yeah, we can get rid of it, but we're just not going to do it because that actually means doing something. And you know how politicians are today.
Yeah, they like their issues.
They like promises. They don't like actually fixing the things that they say in the promises. But back to that calendar, like these are the type of things that where you control the narrative, where you control the story, where you control what people celebrate. Like even Labor's Day, right? Labor's Day is a huge thing that went to the West that came also from the Nazis. Like all of these things just they have in some sense good things behind them, in some sense bad things behind them. But when it comes to modern day studies, modern day universities, like I myself don't even want to go to university anymore, but still I need to get another bachelor's because nowadays you just have to in order to work in certain fields. But I just look at them and I'm like, yeah, you're just gonna teach me things that I don't need to know. Like these are even a university today, right? If you do an exam, I don't know how you guys know about this, but in the universities today, you're basically studying for an exam where you're gonna forget 80% after the exam because all they're doing is testing whether or not you can get the exam. They don't actually care about you maintaining all the information.
Yeah, it's just recitation.
Because what they do actually care about. Yeah, they only care about work experience in the end. So the whole cycle of those 4 years that you spent getting a bachelor is just that so you can prove that you can work as a cog in the system, which is why so many men in Gen Z are resisting. They're like, I don't want to be a cog. I actually, want to do something with my life. So there's a lot of resistance, a lot of dropouts in that regard as well. And that's what happens when the institutions are captured by an ideology that is not healthy for the future.
Yeah, you hear this a lot these days where people go to study, a certain subject for 4 or 5 years, and then they come out and they can't get jobs because there's no real life experience in these fields. They're not given, the universities are not opening up the doors to actual work experience. Maybe some of them do, maybe some subjects do, but there's no real, in some cases, no real experience.
I think there's two things with that as well. Is that we're sending everybody we've been sending everyone to college for decades now, and oftentimes it's stuff they don't need. It's like it'd be more effective to go into a work experience position than getting some kind of accreditation, which is why a lot of these people say, "Oh, well, we need the work experience," because the job market knows that these are useless degrees in a sense, and it's been done for absolutely everything. I mean, you go in there for what's like computer sciences or something like that, and you probably learn a lot more just tinkering around with a computer yourself than you would in a classroom, and actually showing that you can make like program and make some software yourself would go a lot more a lot further in a job interview than going there within, oh, I've got a computer science degree, and it's like, okay, great.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
that's not entirely how it works. If you do get a computer science degree, it does depend on the country that you're in. So in my country, for example, you will get a job very fast. But on the
Right.
other side, if you get certain certificates, like let's say a C++ certificate and a Python certificate and like a JavaScript certificate, these are type of things where if you also make a lot of programs on websites and you show them during your interview, there's a chance that you can get your job, right? But then you're being held back when it comes to promotion. Like there's always still a barrier when it comes to certain entries. If you prove yourself with a long resume, sure. But the difference that, like Dave, you need to understand is the jobs you're describing are mostly in the arts division. STEM is loaded with jobs that are easy to get and fast to get the moment you get a degree. That's why my
Sorry,
country.
what do you mean there, STEM?
STEM is always good. Because
Yeah.
those ones do require a lot of time and investment in.
Can you clarify
Oh yeah,
STEM?
go on.
So
Sorry.
STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Right.
And STEM degrees, so STEM bachelor degrees, is one of the most attractive degrees on the market right now. The things that feminists and women, mostly delusional women, are trying to add is arts, because they're so obsessed with a 50-50 balance, because people talk about autism a lot, but I'm pretty sure these women are probably the most autistic people on the planet, because there's no logic in adding arts to STEAM just so that you can glorify a statistic in saying there's a balance between men and women in STEM. Because that's the reason they're trying to force the arts in there.
Number
Because in
goes up,
arts,
basically.
yeah, but in arts, it's just you're stuck with jobs that have absolutely no value, like Starbucks. Like for example, right? Like when I was talking to a job coach, he was like, "Okay, so you're polyglot." He was trying to get into like you've got like 6 years of work experience in high performance esports, world championships, and I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I could be a translator. It's easy. Like if you're going to tell me go down that route, I will do it. But you and me both know AI is going to replace me within the next few years." And that's future forward thinking, which is something a lot of people in arts, men and women, are completely incapable of. They think that just because they get an arts degree, they should be instantly given a job.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Just not going to happen.
there's a lot of entitlements in there. That's where credentialism comes from, though, isn't it? You go
Yep.
like, oh, I've got a piece of paper that says a thing, therefore I'm better than you.
Yeah. Like even now, if you probably look in England as well, going to like plumber jobs, electric engineering jobs, like they will quite literally pay for you to get a certificate just so that you can work for the next 20 years and then retire. There's a lot of work influence. Also, the pay is good because there's a shortage. And when there's a shortage, that means you can get good income. And if there's good income, you can go from there. You can get your certificates. You can like this is the problem that a lot of people in arts have. They think that just because they know how to write English, I'm like, congratulations, I can do it too. I've written an entire book. I'm not trying to get any money out of that. Like I make 40 cents per book.
Really?
Yeah. I don't
So
make
it's
anything.
definitely a passion project then, isn't it?
Yeah, but I just wanted to write something to myself, basically. Like if you look at Marcus Aurelius, for example, the entire idea behind his Stoicism was him writing a diary to himself. I'm writing a diary to my civilization. I'm writing a diary to the entire West. I'm like, guys, what are you doing?
Oh.
You're being silly. You're being ridiculous.
You've got to be the stern dad.
Yeah, basically, that's the book is a very Dutch book. Like I'm brutally honest, but that's my culture as well. It's to be brutally honest. And when I look at the institutions, I look at people with liberal degrees, like look at entertainment, for example. Entertainment is a good example. These are Tumblr writers with nose rings and colored hair going to justify their extremely awful writing. Like The Witcher, for example. I'm a huge fan of The Witcher, Henry Cavill as well. And then he has to deal with these mediocre writers, mostly women, in The Witcher Netflix show. And he's like, I'm not going to do this. This is ridiculous. Like
Because he was the only one who actually respected the source
yeah,
material.
exactly.
I mean, I only watched the first season. I couldn't.
It was already
I
going
saw what they
downhill
were
after
doing.
that. Like it's so
Yeah,
obvious to see.
I heard what was happening with the second season. Like, I'm not going to watch that. And then Henry Cavill leaves after the third one.
Yep.
So it's like, I feel sorry for the guy because he gets attached to these projects that he seems to care
Yeah, he
about, and
genuinely
then
cares.
and then he gets and then he just gets shafted with people who are either there to make a quick buck or they want to use someone else's platform or someone else's work as a platform for their own ideology, which they're not skilled enough to do, which is why they need someone else's work. Wheel of Time was the best example.
What was Wheel of Time? What was Wheel of Time?
Hey, my favorite book series, classic good versus evil story, but with a lot of politics thrown in the middle. Basically, if you want to do it in a nutshell, yeah. But the show just completely went off of that, where they sidelined the main character. It's like you wouldn't even think he was the main character of his own of a show. Basically gave all of his epic hero moments to all of the women, and turn all the women completely insufferable.
Right.
And it was it just got cancelled last year, thankfully, after 3 seasons, because I had no idea where they were going with it by that point. I only watched the first season of that, and then after that, I just watched review shows of it because it's like I'd rather somebody else suffer through it than me. And yeah, I got a good idea of how bad it was. By the time I'd been through all these review shows, and yeah, they completely butchered it because the lead showrunner, Rafe Judkins, basically wanted it to be about LGBT and feminism, and he actually said, because when fans of the books complain, he said, "Well, if you don't like it, I'm gonna turn more of your favorite characters gay." So it's like clearly he doesn't. He clearly he didn't give a shit about. Yeah. Well, not just a threat. He did do it as well. He turned a lot of characters gay. And it completely ruined the dynamics of the books, because there's like the book series itself ran on the gender divide. Men and women are different, but working together they can achieve things better than they could separately. And excuse me, instead of doing that, they just turned it into men against women. Yeah. Among other things on the show.
This is like the best example.
But,
these are people who went through university to get a degree, got ideology captured, and the actual good writers are people who just write. These are not people who need a degree to justify their skills.
Yeah,
It was the same with Game of Thrones.
Good example, Brandon Sanderson. The dude just writes.
The dude is a machine.
Funny thing is, he was brought in to write the final 3 books of the Wheel of Time because the original author, Robert Jordan, died. So he was brought in to finish it, and he did a pretty good job. I enjoyed the final 3 books. It was a good end to the series. But yeah, he said he was completely ignored by the showrunners.
No, I mean, he doesn't need them, man. Like, have you seen his book? Like, he's a machine.
Yeah, no, I think he either. You can't accuse him of using AI because he's been around since before AI became a big thing.
Yeah. And he's been doing that pace as well.
Yeah,
since before AI.
Yeah, I'm thinking he's either secretly a robot or he's got a secret or he's got a twin who writes a second book while he's doing the first one, because that kind of pace is just not.
It's ridiculous.
And he's got a podcast as well. Like, how does he manage it? But
just for you, Dave, do you know who that is?
I do not know.
Mike, you want to
Sorry.
introduce him? Sanderson.
He's a fantasy author. He does some sci-fi as well, doesn't he?
Yeah,
yeah.
one or two.
But he's a well-known, in writing circles, he's a well-known and well-regarded author. He's got his own podcast. He does a lot of talks about writing, that kind of thing. But he's mainly known for just the pace that he writes. I mean, people complain about
his books are not bad.
Oh no, yes,
They're good books.
he's well regarded. I mean,
Right.
he's got a good fan base. I mean, I've read a good few of his books, and I mean, I've enjoyed it. I mean, I first got exposed to him through Wheel of Time, but it's the sheer pace that he does. I mean, people complain about George R.R. Martin not doing what's his next book? Winds of Winter, I think it is. Yeah, people complain about that because it's been like a decade since his last book. I think Sanderson's written probably about 20 books in the space between the two. I wouldn't be surprised if that was if it was higher, but that's just the sheer pace. I mean, the dude's work ethic is impeccable.
So, what would Sanderson also be known for? Like other works?
Stormlight Chronicles.
Books?
Yeah, it's another
Right,
book
okay.
series. I mean, he's got a lot. So
Has there been any films written on his books?
the only
or
one you
anything?
could say, would be Wheel of Time, which I don't think he wants to be associated with, to be fair.
Right.
Well, I mean, given
Fair
what they
enough.
did to it,
Fair
yeah,
enough.
I'm not surprised.
It's just crazy, man. But that's kind of the anomaly, right? Like these are people who actually know how to write. Like you don't necessarily need a degree to justify your position and your skill. And I think in a lot of trade, when it comes to like these type of concepts, and you just see that there's just a huge problem in universities, where universities and the job market are no longer, well, attracting one another.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not like-minded. Like when you look at universities, you see that they're more obsessed with pushing an ideology than they are actually getting people work, which it makes no sense. Like your entire purpose as a university is to prepare people for the job market, and if not for the job market, it's to prepare them for something above. This is why you see a lot of women, especially when they finish a degree, they just go into PhDs with complete nonsense. This is one of the main things that I learned when I studied physiotherapy. 80% of science is complete bollocks. Because
no, I've heard that as well.
yeah, because especially when you work with human beings, like fellow human beings, as a physiotherapist, like or physical therapist, whatever you call it, you're responsible for another human being. So they're going to make very sure that you know how to read research. And we had to do case studies and systematic reviews and meta-analysis and comparing all of these things and then seeing if these results could be reproduced. And there's been a lot of bogus research the past, 2 decades for me, but for Roger Scruton even longer. Specifically,
I heard isn't the most famous one the vaccines cause autism one, and that was a very quickly debunked study because of the guy was shown to be taking money from people. Basically, it was a very flawed study with like flawed methodology, that kind of thing.
yeah, but that's what everything is like. The reason there were whistleblowers during the COVID, shenanigans, to say the least,
Yeah.
was because the mRNA was still in development phase. So anyone that works with other human beings knows that this is something where you're in development, which means you need to reproduce results, you need to reproduce outcomes, you need to justify your position. Like this is something that has a lot of backing behind it, a lot of money. But instead of actually getting through the details, they just forced it out because they wanted to get COVID out of the way because it's costing them money. So the
It also
reality
got to
is,
make it also made some people a lot
made a
of
lot of
money
money
as
as well.
well.
Yeah. Like the company behind it became filthy rich after that. But the main
Oh,
idea
yeah.
is just that mRNA, even today, like 5 years later, we're
It's
still
still
not
in its
entirely sure.
infancy.
Yeah, we're still not
Well,
entirely sure.
What wasn't it? I remember when a lot of these pharmacy companies were
Like AstraZeneca or
for,
Moderna?
yeah, AstraZeneca, and they're like they had clauses in the contracts with the country saying, yeah, we can't be held responsible for what happens afterwards.
Yeah, because they got pushed, right? It's the same with a lot of companies have in their instructions that this medication is not meant for pregnant women. It's just for accountability because it is not ethically possible to experiment on a pregnant woman.
Oh wait,
So-
are you talking about that trend that's going on now with a bunch of women taking Adderall? Is it Adderall to just because Trump recommended you don't take it?
I have no idea. I don't really pay attention too much to these type of things. I just know that a lot of companies, if you look into their description and like the instructions, that they advise against using it when you're pregnant because they just don't want to be accountable. They're just saying
Yeah,
if you're
no, 'cause
pregnant, you're on your own.
Yeah, it's just that there's a current thing going on right now with. I'm pretty sure it's Adderall. Adderall, because Trump mentioned in a speech like
Well, can you
a
fact
few
check
days
it?
ago or a week. Yeah, you can have a look.
No, you. You're the one bringing it up, mate.
Yeah,
I have
go
no
on.
idea what you're talking about.
Right, so see what I can find it.
Because Adderall sounds strange, to say
Yeah.
the least. Because Adderall is not something you can get. It's something you have to get prescribed.
I'm not sure. It's
What is the whole? What does the drug do? What does it actually do? What does Adderall do?
Adderall is for people with autism and like ADHD.
Yeah, I might be getting the thing mixed up. Give me a second.
Right,
I'll try and
okay.
find it.
Yeah. Like Adderall, like you mostly, this is something in esports as well. Like during my Overwatch days, there were a lot of people, getting Adderall in not so legal ways or just
Oh
straight up
no,
lying.
it's not. It's not Adderall. It's not Adderall. It's Tylenol.
But like Adderall is
Yeah.
there to speed up like your focus. It makes you
Right.
concentrate more. So it's for people like ADHD. If you're very, very jumpy and stuff like that, you are given Adderall so that you can chill down and
okay.
focus. But if you don't have any of these things and you take Adderall, you can focus a lot better. A lot of people in esports did that. Anyway, Mike,
Yeah.
what was it?
It's Tylenol. I've
Yeah.
put
Tylenol.
it. I've put it on the I've put the thing on the Discord for you so you can see it.
Tylenol out of spite? Are they
Yeah,
crazy?
because Trump mentioned it with in a I haven't even seen the thing the Trump clip, but basically he mentioned something about Tylenol, pregnant women not taking it, and all of these like leftist pregnant women taking it just to spite him. And it makes me think of the ivermectin thing.
Have
Do
you
you
not
remember that happened over
killing their
COVID?
babies? I mean, is that too far fetched?
Well,
The risk of doing something to the babies, that's for sure.
it works like aspirin, kind of. Like it also does fever reduction. So it's kind of like in the paracetamol type
Right.
of division. But I mean, like I said, these companies. Well, I guess this is one of the things that came out. Then, like these companies are just saying, like we do not hold any accountability for pregnant women. It's in our instructions. It's in our like it's.
Well, so someone's brought up old messages from Tylenol saying we don't recommend you take this during pregnancy. So even they've said, so like you said, they don't want to take liability, but then these people are risking kids out because they've been
Out of spite.
ideologically captured.
Out of spite.
Yeah, it's literally this is literally cutting out your baby to spite
I mean,
your,
because
to spite your face.
when a woman's pregnant, she's got two different immune systems inside her, basically. You know what I mean? Because the kid's got their own immune system. The woman's got their own immune system. And if the kid's immune system's fighting against the Tylenol, it might cause damage. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things.
You've got to be you've
so tiring.
It's just but it's going what you were saying about the ideological capture. They're so ideologically captured that they don't think at all.
Right?
Yeah, and that's the whole point of ideological capture, isn't it? Just to stop people from thinking.
Yeah, but that's what George Orwell warned about, right? Like the entire reason he wrote all of these things was to tell people to step up. Like if you're going down this route, there's a horrible future waiting you, and most people are now treating it like an instruction manual.
But yeah, a lot of these people don't think that far ahead. To be honest, I don't think, because it's all about it comes to instant gratification, so you don't think about where you're going to be in 5 years.
And that's kind of like where my understanding comes from. Like when I wrote about amnesia and I wrote about the details regarding amnesia, specifically cultural amnesia, like the patterns of forgetting your entire background, where you come from, what's important. Most philosophers, tradition. Most philosophers, they think in their own sense. They don't speak to actual people. Like if you think about Nietzsche, he was surrounded in a bubble. If you think about Burke, he was surrounded in a bubble. Like these people are surrounded in bubbles. And that's a huge issue no matter which side of the spectrum you're on. People get surrounded by ideologies even if they don't know. And that's the biggest issue. Like most people, like Augustine said, are just stupid. And we need to start accepting that people are stupid. What you do is you create an ideology or you create a framework where you teach people, even if they're stupid, that they have healthy thoughts, that they can have a healthy society, they can have a healthy functioning system. Like I had a conversation with Dave earlier this week regarding like infrastructure of his city, and then I'm like, okay, in my city we have amazing infrastructure. The difference is just that the actual people in my city made it happen. And the biggest issue that you see when it comes to taking action is that people, generally speaking, just don't want to take action. They just want to sit on their ass. They want to, like, if you even go back in time, people just don't want to do things. They're lazy or they're just stupid. They just want to have their own simple life. If you talk to the actual normal people, the average 9 to 5 worker with a family, he just wants his own house, his own people around him to be happy. He sees the entire country goes to shit, but he looks the other way because at least he's happy. And then slowly, his own front door starts catching fire, and suddenly he's like, oh, now it's suddenly a problem. And then he's suddenly willing to do something because at that stage your house is burning and now you have choices to make.
The meism, isn't it?
Yeah, and that is the biggest problem that I see in society is the ideology of the self. Right now, the modern ideology, to best describe it, is the self. We have made the self our religious icon. And when you do something as dangerous as that, is when you create a society that we have right now, where everyone thinks they're right. Everyone, like, even in politicians, there's been study on this, where they ask politicians into certain studies. Some studies agree with them and suit their ideology. Some studies don't, but are more factually based and more reproducible. The politician would still choose the one that is in his lane, despite the fact that the other one clearly is scientifically superior. And that is where we are now, where people will rather choose what they themselves like to hear over what's actually important to be heard. And that brings us. Go on.
I've got a thought. So what about, because like the whole point of wokeness as well is like it's based in communism. So doesn't that go against individualism?
It's actually from Robespierre. The earliest instance of wokeism comes from the French Revolution. That's pre-communism.
Was it not feudalism?
Well,
You're talking
No, it
about
wouldn't be
something very different, Dave.
yeah, feudalism. No, it wouldn't be feudalism. Yeah, but so it's like proto-communism, but that still wouldn't that still be the opposite of individualism?
But the worship of the self is regardless of ideology. Like right now, whether you are left, right, or center, you at some point have been taught yourself to you yourself are important. This comes from Nietzsche as well, where we have made it to a point where the individual chooses for themselves. So all the decisions you have made in your life so far have been quote unquote free will, right?
Okay.
And that is the idea of the individual. That is the actual current ideology, the self. Communism is currently the most dominant, well, not really dominant, the loudest ideology. Because what a lot of people do when they worship themselves, what they do is they attract like-minded people. That's why there's a lot of narcissism in the current modern left. You see that this very, well, bubble, so to say, is in its own mechanisms just destroying itself. Like kind of like the snake eating its own tail.
What
Yeah,
about in situations, sorry, where, for example, the choice is being made for you? So, like, maybe to bring into the conversation about China and their social scoring system, like, to a degree, choices are being made for them because kind of scoring.
I mean, this is the interesting about China, right? Because China, if you look at their history in Confucianism and Taoism, both systems actually reject this idea. Both systems are against what China is currently doing. And China, over, well, the past 2 millennia, have collapsed mostly due to over-regulating things. And this is something where Taoism was very against. Like the way of Wu Wei was to make it very clear to not put so many rules on not just yourself but on everything, to not try to administrate everything, to not try to make a bureaucracy out of everything. And that's the route that China's currently going. That they're experts at this because they keep repeating that same cycle, which is very unfortunate, because if you take that system out of it, China actually has a very strong ideology. Confucianism itself is very healthy. Like if you look at a documentary on the Kong family, for example, Kong family, because Confucian comes from the family Kong, that is the actual inventor, well, not really inventor, what you call it, the teacher, because he's not even the founder. Like he said all of these things, and he had students, and his students just took all of the things that he said and made schools out of it. That's how you get the Confucius schools. And the Kong family has a 2,000-year plus family tree, and they hold very much the spirit behind have respect for where you came from, be honorable to your family name, like don't dishonor the family. These are not bad things to have in your family, to know that there's moral principles,
isn't it?
So in that sense, there's very good things that can be done with it. Obviously, there's always going to be a hierarchy. And this is another problem with the modern ideology, that they don't want to have hierarchies. There's always going to be a hierarchy. You take away the patriarchy, something else takes its place. You take the oligarchy, for example, comes into place. Like, it doesn't matter what you do, there's always going to be leaders. Whether people like it or not, there's going to be people in charge. And
the necessity as well.
Yeah, it is necessary. Like, if you think about it, if you're never going to have decisions made, that's when you get modern democracy. Democracy at its current stage is the so-called we don't have a patriarchy. Well, there's oligarchy behind the current democracy. There's a lot of rich people telling politicians what to say, right? And that's what the modern system is. Like, you have all the politicians saying like there is no hierarchy, but there is. You're just not looking at it. It's in the background, so to say. It's the shadow behind the actual play. That's why we're looking mostly at marionettes instead of like looking at people.
Is that not why they say follow the trail of the money, and then you can actually see where the decisions are being made?
Exactly. And that's just the nice thing about China. Like the tradition is not the problem. The tradition that you have in England is not the problem. The tradition is something like, if you think about organic development within rooted cosmopolitanism, you would learn from your mistake and keep growing as a society. This is what happened with the slave trade, right? You did the slave trade, you abolished the slave trade, you paid the price for the slave trade, you kept going, and now there's a bunch of psychopaths that have decided, you know what, you have not paid the price yet, which makes no sense.
You will never pay the price, basically.
Yeah, that's a repeating pattern, and that comes from the French. Like, the French Revolution revolutionized all of these ideas to never have peace, to never have like an actual status quo, to always be in the Faustian spirit, what Spenger talks about. That's how he describes the West as a Faustian spirit, a flame that is just bright and always just going for more. But at some point, it's going it's going to have no more resources to feed on at some point. And China is taking that route, right? Like, one of the things that I write about in my book when it comes to the CO2, for example, CO2 is a problem, but there's no solutions. Like, everything that we're doing right now is we're just borrowing coal from another nation, right? Like, all the solar panels that we're putting up in my country and all the wind turbines are made in China from Chinese coal with Chinese CO2. We can be as hypocritical as we want, but the reality is, like, we're just a bunch of idiots. Like, we just pretending that we're green.
It's that, and not to mention all of the fuel costs and everything that comes with it.
Yeah, but not just
all the shipping and transport.
It's also R&D, because the things that we're importing are going to be worthless. If you look at Moore's law, they're going to be worthless in a few years. So now we need to replace everything, and now you have an enormous amount of e-waste. So not only did you do an extremely hypocritical thing by getting something from another country and then pretend that your CO2 is not your problem, now you're also getting an enormous amount of e-waste that you need to recycle, because you've now created a system where you're just always in a problem. And that's like modern day Europe, right? Europe pretends that they're like progressive, but we're one of the most regressive places on the planet. America and China laugh at us. Japan and South Korea laugh at us. Of course, they have their own problems, but we shouldn't be looking at others. We should be looking at ourselves. Why do our countries collapse? Why do our societies collapse? Why do Because if you're going to worry about something that's out of your control, then you're already thinking about the wrong thing, right?
Yeah.
And that brings you to actually full circle, right? Like the institutions are responsible for making sure that people are at the very minimum patriotic, because that's the core concept, right? Like there's a lot of people saying that nationalism is bad due to the fact of Nazis, right? But patriotism, like being a patriot, is not a problem. There's nothing wrong with being a patriot. That just means rooted cosmopolitanism. That means you're going to be proud of your country and proud of your culture, but at the same time, you're willing to grow. You're willing to evolve. You're willing to keep growing and reach higher places, right? When we first put a man on the moon, this was Operation Paperclip. These were Nazi scientists coming from Nazi Germany that were transferred to the United States who put a man on the moon. You can talk about like the ethics behind all of that due to the nature of them being Nazi scientists, but the reality is that you need to just keep growing. Like if you're gonna worry about everything all the time, you're worrying about the wrong things. It's about actions, and
Yeah.
actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, 100%. Actions do speak louder than words. You know, I just wanted to understand, but as well, like Roger Scruton brought up about totalitarian government. What is that?
Well, the current state of the European Union is soft totalitarianism, to make it as simple as possible. So if you think about, you're Scotland, so I'll just do it from my side because I'm Dutch. Did I vote for von der Leyen? Did I vote for the current people in charge of the European Union? Am I voting for things that they're passing through? The answer to all of these questions is no. Am I then part of a democracy or am I part of an authoritarian regime?
Right, okay, yeah, so the latter.
Yeah, so that's what soft totalitarianism is, the illusion that you live in democracy when you don't. Like the things that are happening in my country, the things that are happening in your country that's led to Brexit, come from a place where you do not agree what the European Union is doing, but you have no say in it due to the fact that the European Union just tells you to shut up.
Yeah, they basically.
Right.
I think so. We got Brexit in name only. In the end, it doesn't look like anything's different. We still got like the EU putting its thumb on the scales.
Yeah, they still like very much dictate our human rights laws and things like that. So there's only certain things
What
we
you're
can
describing
do.
right now is what
Yeah,
Roger Scruton
okay,
described.
fair
That's
enough.
soft totalitarianism, where they are deciding for you, which means you are not a democracy.
Yeah, it's more a
Yeah,
dictatorship.
pretty much. I mean, well, look what happened with me when I put my flag up. I've had plenty of people, mostly in my family, making out that I'm making a terrible mistake. It's like, no, I'm just being a patriot.
Yeah, like there's a
Yeah.
difference between being a patriot and being a nationalist, and people do not understand the difference because at no point in time were we actually taught about these things. That's the reality, right? Like nobody is teaching you what the difference actually is.
Yeah.
So you just have face value, and when you have face value, that means you've been taught things that are suiting a certain ideology.
Yeah. So when do you think this gets brought to the extreme then? When does it get taken to the extreme? Like on either end?
I mean, it already has. Like, if you look at the final chapter of my book, right? We spoke a little bit about it last week. You have the bureaucratic way of, like I said, it is good. It is with good intention. There are people who genuinely believe that they're doing these things with good intention. Do you know who else taught that? Nazi guards.
Right, okay.
It's a bit of an extreme
Can
jump.
imagine. Well, a lot of I mean, a lot of atrocities have been done
Yeah.
for the
Yeah,
greater good.
but like even the Vendi genocide, right? Like a lot of scholars do not agree with the fact that the Vendi genocide was a genocide because they consider it some sort of, well, civil war, which is a ridiculous statement to make because the genocide was against actual people. A civil war is soldiers versus soldiers.
I've not heard of the Sendi genocide. What's
The
that?
Vendi genocide. The Vendi genocide is
The what
during the French Revolution in
Hmm.
the 1790s. The generals serving under the, well, at that stage, French rule. So they got rid of all the royalty, right? To make it as simple as possible. You have
Yeah.
the royalty, they got rid of those, and then they created a new ideology where people have to be citizens of the state. So you would have no more religion or whatever. You are loyal only to the state. And in Vendi,
So communism then.
kind of, yeah. That's why communism originates from the French Revolution. That's why they called what the French did Marx called it the bourgeois half measure. They considered what the French actually did a half measure. He didn't think they went far enough. That's why I'm.
And even the French committed a genocide for it as well.
Yeah, but this is where historians are disagreeing with the fact that it's a genocide. But in reality, when they went to Vendy, because there was resistance, generals actually, with pride, reported back to Paris, saying the old ways are dead. We've exterminated enemies of the Republic. These were bakers. These were, well, lumbermen, just regular everyday citizens. When you are considering a civil war, that means soldiers versus soldiers, militia versus actual like fighting, right? Like if you think about the American Civil War,
combatants versus
combatants, exactly. These people in Vendy were not combatants. They were average day Jones, right? These are people who went to church. These are people who made bread. These are people who made houses. These are repairmen. These are regular kinds of people. And they killed over 150,000 to 500,000 people. These were not soldiers. These were not combatants. There's even parts in the reports where they gladly elated themselves to saying they wiped out all the children. At that stage, I'm no longer dealing with a civil war. If you're going to be proud about the fact that you drowned children, this is psychopathic. That means you've done a genocide. There's historians that disagree with this, but there's been a lot of pushback in the 2000s with new research and new documents and historical references coming out where they're being very clear that this is a genocide, and still historians are like, no, this is part of civil war. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm Dutch. I'm brutally
don't believe
honest.
your lion eyes.
I'm brutally honest. I'm Dutch. Like, I'm not going to take this. Like, Raphael Lemkin wrote a very clear definition to genocide, and when it comes to Vendy, it marks every single section. All of them.
I mean, just trying to drown kids would be enough for me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is it's completely. I just can't comprehend like how we've allowed an ideology like this to keep existing, because like Parent 1 and Parent 2 comes from the French Revolution. That whole concept of abolishing parents and making things gender neutral and all of these things comes from the French Revolution.
I know that.
That's what the whole book is about. The whole book points, well, obviously the great schism as well with the three popes and like the corruption of the Catholic Church. But the ideology of today originates from the French Revolution, which was then, because Holy Roman Empire lost so miserably, the response of the German people was in the, well, kind of like communism and fascism. You had Marx and you had Nietzsche. And these people wrote their works, one interpreted in the way of fascism, the other way in communism, and then they went all the way with both of these systems, right? With all consequences of them. Like Trotsky, he made the very good observation in my eyes, very similar to what Will Durant did with the Roman Empire, that the build-up from the French Revolution, in comparison to the losing of morals from the Catholic Church because of how corrupt they were, caused such a vacuum in Europe that the First World War, when Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated, it was just an ideological war that just needed like this fuse.
Yeah, it was a powder keg.
Yeah, it was a powder keg. It was always going to blow up, and that's the World War One. World War Two is a result of punishing a country to such an extreme. You get World War Two.
Yeah,
because that's what happened with the Weimar Republic. Bit simplified, but I don't want to make the listeners be too complicated with these concepts. So even today, because, well, fascism lost, you went with the bourgeois half measure, which is communism. So right now, all the ideology that is being pushed since the 50s, I would say, has traces back from the French Revolution and communism. That's why communism, like Marx's work, has been rewritten so many times. Like the original document isn't that big, but they've like written thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pages on it now, trying to justify it.
Yeah, well, isn't that because they couch it in, like, I guess you say righteous causes, like, we're against racism, but then they're trying to segregate everyone.
It's a camouflage.
We're against sexism, but then they don't give a shit about what happens to women half that, or they demonize men.
Yep.
So yeah, you can't.
And that is something
Yeah,
that
I
came
think.
out of the French Revolution. The French
Yeah, I thought.
Revolution had this very clear concept in mind that the revolution is never over.
Oh yeah, it was like worst thing for an activist is the problem going away.
Yep. That is the core concept.
When you've got civilization, but with millions of people or billions of people with billions of different choices, billions of different belief systems, is there ever going to be a true system that will ever work that will keep everybody in line?
No.
So the direction I'm going in is universalism, and not kind of like the universalism that is being described in theology from Christian church. So I don't really agree with that church, but the idea that every single properly functioning culture says the exact same things. So when I wrote my second book, I looked at Hinduism, I looked at Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, Christianity, and Islam. And all of these religious systems say the same things if you look at what is important for society to function. Then I took all of those concepts and looked at philosophy, because one side is religious, right? Like for me, religion is both a religion and a philosophy in one. It's a package deal.
Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
separate that and you look only at philosophy, you see the exact same thing. Like if you look at Roger Scruton, if you look at Edmund Burke, if you look at any of our other very influential people when it comes to the functioning of a society, they're all saying the same thing. Like with Plato, Aristotle, even in Stoicism, like Cicero, like everyone, when it comes to the most fundamental basis of how a society should function, says the same thing. So that's what my second book is about. The question then, will it ever go away? Personally, I believe that if every single country unifies as one single country with one ideology and one religion, you would still have civil war.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because if you get two people in a room, you're gonna get different
Yeah.
opinions.
Yep.
And when you get to 3 and 4, it just increases exponentially. So you will never the whole. That's why the whole concept of utopia can never exist, because it's not going to be a utopia for everybody. It might be a utopia for you, but someone else is going to find a flaw in it, and other people are going to find many more
Yeah.
flaws in it.
Well, even if you look at the political landscape, you've always got people on the left side and people on the right side, but the government are aiming for the same goal. Essentially, they want to unify to a degree, but there's always going to be two different sides.
Depends on the method.
Yeah.
It depends on the method. I mean, you'll find that on the right now, at least the general consensus is that they just want to leave people alone to do their own thing. But then with the left, it's gone very authoritarian. That's not to say there's no authoritarians on the right, because there will be plenty of authoritarians on the right who will want to use the momentum to of the current political landscape to be able to force their own beliefs and opinions to everybody else. The trick is you gotta stop them from doing that. And because they're always doing it in the form of like some kind of utopia, like, oh yeah, because we know the right way of doing things. And it's like, no, you might know what's best for you, but you don't know what's best for everybody else. So let people generally figure out their own life.
It was just a thought that was going through my head. I mean, we see what's happening in our own country right now. We see what's happening in the UK. We see what's happening in, the Netherlands. What's happening in China? What's happening in Japan politically?
In Japan, and let's specifically look at South Korea, because right now the lowest birth rates ever recorded are in South Korea. So South Korea, I would say, well, not really just me specifically, but generally speaking, for people that are looking into this, they've got the worst of both sides. So the worst side of Confucianism with extreme focus on hierarchy, because even in hierarchy there needs to be a balance, and that balance, South Korea has it on steroids.
Well, you also need a competent leader.
Yeah,
or
that
leaders.
too. But it's just that hierarchy has gone so out of control that there just needs to be respect no matter what, which creates a complete vacuum. And then at the same time, they have the worst side of capitalism. So everything needs to be sold. If you look at the K-pop industry, I mean, the conditions of the K-pop artists, the amount of plastic surgery that is needed just to be pretty, it is a very unrealistic society, and it just depends on what comes out of that. Because traditionally, they're investing a lot of money when it comes to their culture, maintaining their culture, and they're also very patriotic, which is a very good thing, right?
Apparently, they're also very racist as well. so I've
This
heard.
is the thing, right? Everyone is racist. Like this whole concept
Yeah.
of people saying, "Oh, you're racist," is something I'm starting to get allergic to, because by nature, everyone is racist.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just find it funny that no one mentions it usually because it's like they probably are. And it's like because it's a national thing. It's like it was a cultural thing, isn't it? So you've got your
Yeah,
own
cultural
culture,
thing.
and you prefer your culture to everyone else. You can say that's a bit racist. I mean,
It's normal.
yeah, but it just oh god.
To be racist, you need to go by the definition in the dictionary. And I watched a video about violence and words. So people throw these words about as racist and extremist X, Y, and Z. But really, we should be looking at it from the dictionary definition, and therefore there's no ambiguity to what a person is or what a person's point of view is. You know what I mean? So racist is characteristic by or showing prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism against a person or people on the basis of their membership of a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalised. So, I mean, when you say you're getting sick of it, Dominic, about people throwing words about and allergic to it, I guess it's maybe people using it as a violence
Well, it's
or a word
it's
No,
to
it's a
antagonize the
word.
other person,
used to
It's a word
or
to
to shut
downplay
the other
you.
person
It's a
down.
word to downplay
yeah,
you.
it's a word that's done to
Yeah,
classify you as someone not as part of their ideology, and
Yep.
in recent
yeah.
days,
Well,
it's
I mean, it
well
shuts the
in
person down,
recent
doesn't it?
like over the last year, especially, it's been used to justify violence on people.
Yeah, like if you look at South Korea, like it's just patriotism. Like you come to my country, you will behave properly. Done.
Yeah, yeah.
If I look at my country and I looked at if we just had that attitude, I wouldn't be seeing, because in the Netherlands, we are quite Germanic, right? We're a bit autistic when it comes to numbers. So we have something called the CBS, which is the Central Bureau for Statistics. And in the CBS, we see the statistics for second generation immigrants, third generation immigrants, people with ethnic backgrounds. And I'm sorry to say this, but we have statistics clearly showing that the crime rates for such an extreme minority is 7 to 10 times higher than actual native Dutch people. And that is only because Dutch people tend to have more, what would you call it? Casual crimes like fines and stuff like that. These are still things that get added to this list, obviously. But if you think about more brutal things like murder, rape, and like actual like sexual harassment and everything, they're mostly foreigners or people with foreign backgrounds. And to say then, oh, it is racist, you're creating an issue where your own people are getting completely destructive with their own culture and everything. There's nothing remaining. And
Yeah,
this is what I have the biggest problem with. Like in my final chapter on book 2, I write about the asylum system in my country. And I compare it to the Danish system and the Oman system because I have friends in the Middle East, right? In Oman, for example, this is something everyone can learn from because apparently common sense is wishful thinking nowadays. In Oman, there's a system that if you, as an individual, want to get a house, families get priority. But not just any families, no, no, no. People with actual Omani passports get priority over you. The second priority is people, again, with Omani passports who are looking to get married and looking to have children. And these are specific zones throughout the entire country where you just completely ignored unless you want to have a family or you have a family. So, one of my friends, who is male, single, wants to get a house. It took him 10 years, which is not too bad, to be honest. Like, if you think about it, only 10 years. He's someone that's single. He does want to get a wife and children eventually. And at that stage, if he wants to get a better house than he has now, he probably can. He doesn't need to, though, because the house he got was actually quite nice. But that is a system that actually makes sense, because in my country, we have been overpopulated since the 50s. We have interviews and speeches from our queen at the time clearly stating we're full. That's why we made an entire new province from the sea. We basically gave the sea a middle finger and created an entire new province. And we
Yeah.
put houses on top of that thing. And then we went, okay, now we have a little bit more space. And now, last year, the audacity from my government came in to say that in 2030ish, 2040ish, they want to potentially look at a law making it so that the maximum population of this country can only be up to 19 or 20 million, which is similar to the one-child policy that China did, which all consequences, this is a complete authoritarian thing that they're talking about. What has to come out of that, I don't know. Like, we're going to such a bad place that it comes to the point where I'm like, I'm just here to think about what comes after the ashes. Like, I'm
Yeah,
just,
what can we save?
yeah, what can we save? Yeah, like, I'm not gonna have any influence. Like, I'm not someone that gets involved with politics. Like, I write political books, but I'm not quite interested in actually getting involved with these politics. But I do understand what's happening, because I was thinking about, okay, I want a wife, I want children. But then I started thinking about what kind of world do I bring them into? I was thinking about emigrating, like going to Asia probably. But then I was looking at my parents and my family, and that's when I started thinking, okay, so in Confucianism, like in China, for example, because you asked me about China too, right? There is a point in time during the year where all students go home. So during this period of time, all the trains and all the staff is preparing for all of the students and all of the working force to go
Yeah.
home. So they have an entire system in place just for that specific moment, so that they can all safely, without issues, in a proper way, without disruption, go on the train and go home, so that they can visit their family.
You're talking about immigrating to Asia there as well. I find quite an interesting fact that foreigners for the Philippines, they can't directly own land due to constitutional restrictions. So, if you wanted to go and buy a house there and live there, you couldn't.
Yeah, but I could go to. In the end, I'm a polyglot, right? I already
Right.
speak most of the Asian languages, so
Okay.
I could go to, for example, Vietnam.
Yeah,
I would
but you
have
would
to
still be
learn.
classed as a foreigner.
Yeah, but then I could be like, I could get a Vietnamese wife and just live there for the rest of my life, right?
Yeah.
Well, there are ways to get naturalized as well.
Like I would, because I'm someone that looks into the culture. I would, like, for example, right now I'm speaking in English, but still with a little bit of Dutch
Yeah.
behind it, because I want to be brutally honest and things like this, right? But when I speak in Korean, for example, I'm very respectful. Like I'm a bit laid back. Like I'm trying to find out the other person's age to make sure that I'm being respectful. And if I were to see them in real life, I would bow and everything. Like I will be respectful for these people, because in their culture, this is what I expected of me. It's the same in Japan. It's the
Yes.
same in China. And in my country, this is because there's a sociology study in my country specifically about integration. So let's talk about integration. Our culture is sex, drugs, and alcohol. You're getting people from traditional countries and you're demanding they integrate. Like, I am not pointing fingers at immigrants or refugees at all. And just statistically speaking, they are a problem. But the thing that my country then talks about, like all the so called people with a degree, or in my eyes, morons, what they are talking about then is integration. We're like, okay, when have you ever interacted with regular Dutch people? Because our entire culture is based on just consumerism, materialism. Why would anyone want to integrate into this? You've created a dead culture. Nobody is interested in our nonsense. They come here, they might learn the language, but that's about it. They're not gonna go to the club every week and sleep with a different woman every week. They're not gonna go and like be miserable in a park and take drugs. Some of them do, but most of them are not gonna participate in this nonsense. This is not a culture. So what do they do?
Yeah.
Well, that's why you're getting. Well, that's why you're getting a rise of more old-fashioned traditionalism
Yeah.
in a lot of these things now, in opposition to it, because you're aware now that these they're good for instant gratification, but they're not good for you in the long run. And as a society, we're coming to that realization as
Well,
well.
look at consumerism right now. I mean, what's sustained by 2030? You own nothing and be happy.
Yep.
because we want to consume everything. We want to go out, get new cars. You've got PCP offers every 4 years that entitles you to get a new car, or not entitles you, but
Subscription.
it leads you to get a new car. Yep, you've got your Netflix subscriptions, you get your Disney Plus subscriptions, you've got TikTok that are 15-second videos that people just consume and get a dopamine hit out of immediately. And I mean, does that lead into amnesia thing that you talk about in the book?
Yeah, like we won't know. That's what you have to ask. Who profits? Well, then you follow the money, and it's like, yeah, like you can blame the elite all they want, but in the end, like what they want is money, and how do they get money? By having a bunch of people completely addicted to the system. So what is important? What Berkey describes. You make sure that you teach your children the right things. You make sure that your institutions, your schools, your universities, everything teach the people the right things so that once they leave these systems, this is something I'm very adamant on as well. In China, you need to do a civil exam in order to get any position anywhere when it comes to decision making for the population. So any mayor, any politician needs to go through a civil exam with the passing rate in China of around 4%. It's a very brutal test where you're being tested on everything, your critical thinking, your decision making, and these are things then that we will need in our country, where you argue about, okay, this is what we want, this is what we're going to do, so that your actions show what you actually mean. Because right now we have a theater. We have a theater in our politicians who are creating problems for 10 years in the future, so that in 10 years they can talk about the problems they made 10 years ago and justify their position in the government and keep being a blood leech into our tax system.
Can't argue against that. There is a lot of pageantry about it, which is very annoying.
Yeah. And that brings you back to the French Revolution and the postmodern assault. Foucault himself had this nihilistic endgame. My point is not that everything is bad, but that everything is dangerous. And if everything is dangerous, then we always have something to do. And that is the current ideology, the engine of perpetual revolution.
Yeah, it's like to say, like, it's progressivism. It's like progress to
It's
what?
keeping the people who are in.
The regression, because we're self-destructing.
Oh
right?
yeah, but it's like progress for the sake of it. Change and progress for the sake of it isn't always a good thing. Some things do need to change, but other things, yeah, they can stay as they are right now because they work. Like people trying to get rid of like the nuclear family and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Why? Why do you want to get rid of that? And they want to get rid of it just because it's something to change, you know?
The nuclear family is not like the best version, but like when you replace a family structure, you need to replace it with another family structure. We've just completely got rid of the family structure. This comes from the French Revolution.
And we're trying to do it with the state now as well, which is like
This is what happened during the Soviet Union as well, right? Like they also got rid of the family, and within 10 years, they had to massively change ship because they were losing birth rates en masse. And not just that, by the end of that period before Stalin kicked in, you had this situation where divorce rates were 80%. Like destroying the family structure and destroying the family itself always leads to an anxiety and depressive nation where men forget how to be men, women forget how to be women, and you forget what a marriage means. You forget what it means to sacrifice in order to have children, and that is what the current ideology is: the self. You're only
yeah. I was going to say you don't look beyond yourself because
Exactly.
with children you've got to you've got to look beyond, look after someone besides yourself. Same with like caregivers as well, to some extent, because they have to look after other people as well, and it's not an easy thing to do in any situation like that.
Yeah. And that is kind of like the whole problem. Like our problem with institutions and our problem that what we're teaching children, what we're teaching families, what we're teaching our people is the reason why we're at this stage. Everything becomes
So
a problem.
it's a purposeful destruction then from above, really,
Well,
is what it sounds like.
I wouldn't really say with purpose. It's just like this makes money and they are, because this is the thing, right? This started in the 50s already. So the current generation, if you think about the cycles of forgetting, the way I write it down. Like in education, same way Roger Scruton describes it, the Trojan horse of education. Like in phase 1, you're already dealing with replacement. You're replacing foundational texts that actually made a nation, and you're replacing it with things like case studies about hegemony, oppression, and identity politics. And then in phase 2, you change that with units on like slavery and modules and women's rights, who in isolation have something to say. But if you look at the bigger picture, there is absolutely no logic whatsoever in like isolating yourself on these systems because they have nothing to do with what's actually going on. And then in phase 3,
Yeah,
this is where we
it's like square. Yeah, it's very square peg round hole, isn't it?
Yeah, because now in phase 3, where we are currently is a therapeutic reframing. So it is with genuine good intention that some of these politicians, because there's always bad eggs, but some of these politicians are with genuine intention, like trying to create a better world. They just don't understand that what they're creating is a worse one.
Well, it comes to tautologies as well, doesn't it? Because they genuinely believe they're doing the right thing. Therefore, nothing they do can be wrong or evil. And that's the problem when if you start thinking in tautologies, that's when, because it comes with like the whole self-assuredness or arrogance in some cases. Go like, oh yeah, well we're so sure that what we're doing is the right thing, but
it's arrogance.
You should always you should always have some self-doubt in there. Go like, well, is what I'm doing the right thing? Do I need to rethink things?
Yeah. Well, it's also been prideful as well, I think, to a degree. Like,
well, it's tied
pride
to it.
Takes a lot. Yeah, you know what I mean. It always says to be meekful. Try and be meekful of things. Which, I mean, to be meekful. The more powerful man is meekful.
Well, no, it's not about being meek necessarily, but it's being able to at least question yourself. You know, self-reflection is the thing. That's not a sign of meekness.
Well, I mean, if you want to learn, then you need to be able to question yourself. You know, if you want to learn from your bad choices, then you need to be able to open up that dialogue with yourself and say, right, okay, was this really the best thing to do?
Yeah, but that's got nothing to do with meekness.
No, I know, but there is a degree of being meek as well. If you're in power, then you know being prideful is going to cause problems. Whereas if you're meekful,
I think you're talking more about being humble there, aren't you?
Well, yeah, to a degree, I suppose, as well.
I mean, because meekful also isn't a word.
I don't know. Where do you stand with that, Dominic?
It's definitely not a word.
I mean, I would say it really depends on where you're trying to go with this.
Yeah, I suppose it was from I think the conversation we had a few weeks ago off the podcast about being prideful and meekful and where that kind of came into in terms of Christianity and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the tradition is just the core concept, right?
Yeah.
Like when it comes to what you call this, like certain parties in government as well. Like with pride is like the first sense. Like if you think about the arrogance of the generation from the 50s, the generation that Roger Scruton is from, he had to deal with a lot of people that were against like what came from World War II, right? Because nationalism, the word Nazi quite literally comes from nationalism, like it's an abbreviation. And their quote-unquote pride justified their position when it came to anything that has to do with nationalism is bad.
Well, it's why they say it now. All like the populist movements popping up all over Europe and in the US are far right movements, which they're not, most of them.
I mean, that's just the reality. Like when it comes to the differences between like these systems, people don't understand that if you just pretend like all of these things aren't like a real problem, the problem will find you.
Oh yeah,
that's just the thing. And that's what brings you back to last week's episode, right? Like with Polybius, the cycle that we're currently in is a democracy, and after democracy comes mob rule.
Right. And what does mob rule mean?
Just look at Charlie Kirk.
So, in terms of that, then Charlie Kirk's arguments obviously caused him a problem, and people decided to go and take violence into their hands, or not people, but one person, who was probably mentally
I
unhinged.
think you've got it a bit backwards there. Charlie Kirk was causing other people problems because of his talk, because of what he was talking about. They didn't like what he was talking about, and that was their problem.
Yeah, but then that comes down to what I said earlier about violence and words. People are not then taking. I think Charlie Kirk did say some things that were controversial, but also there was meaning. If you actually looked at the meaning of some of his words that he was using, then if you look at the true meaning of it, then there's not violent intent within that meaning, but it's how people interpret it at that time.
I don't even think what he was saying was controversial. It was just, honestly,
the whole thing about abortion was quite controversial.
I wouldn't say it's controversial. That's typical Christian. That's a pretty
values.
Yeah, and it's not controversial. People just say it's controversial because they wanna make out that it's a fringe thing, and it's not really.
Yeah. So that's what I mean in terms of that. Obviously people who are more on the left side are going to see what he's saying as against their whole ethos, right? So they're going to then take that out and violent actions.
That's what I'm saying. He's causing them a problem because he's talking about things that they don't like, because it goes against their ideology. So they've got to become more violent. They've completely lost the argument in that case now, because they've shown that they are really violent and willing to kill people just for the crime of saying something that they don't agree with.
Yeah. So I mean, do you think there'll ever be a true speaker that can speak up for everybody and get everybody to align? I guess, to go back to the original question.
No, it's actually always happened. Every single time democracy collapsed, a prince, a monarch would stand up. And this is what happened. This is something we spoke about last week as well, the Polybius cycle. Mob rule will take over. So people will start finding it okay to stop killing. And after the killing, quote unquote, goes away, some leader will stand up, and that leader is going to be the next prince, the next monarch. And then you go back into a monarchy. You saw it with China, best example.
No, there's no.
But then the monarchy has
there's no perfect system.
Every single system has a problem.
Again, it goes back. It goes back to utopia.
Yeah.
What someone's idea of a utopia could be another person's hell. There's no way to get something that would be work for everybody. Some people do. Some people do prefer communism, like genuinely prefer it.
There's no nirvana.
There are some places out there. I mean, I've heard it mentioned on Tim Pool's podcast a few times. There's like a communist. It's a commune out in the US somewhere, and it's only got 100 people in it, and it's only allowed to have 100 people in it. Whenever someone moves out, that's when someone else on the waiting list can come in, because. Yeah, these people realize that communism can't scale up beyond like maybe 100 people or so, and these people just kind of want to live like, oh well, I just want to live. I want to like grow my own food, get live on this little commune. Want to help out all the other people, and what's mine is theirs. What's theirs is mine. But yeah, it only works in a small scale like that.
Yeah, I think that's true of probably every system, because the moment you try to scale up and industrialize that, maybe that's the wrong word, but once you try to put that on a mass scale, everybody's different, so everybody's going to have a different take on it, and then there's going to be problems.
Some scale up better than others. Like with capitalism, it does kind of revolve on some kind of survival of the fittest. but that leaves people free to move up and down the social ladder as they want, as their wants and skills dictate.
Yeah. So I mean, if we summarize today's podcast, what would we take away from it?
Well, the main thing is just the institutions and what we teach our children, what we teach ourselves, what we teach the people around us, and just the general consensus of what is currently important if we don't want to go too far. Because the more we start denying the actual problems, the worse the consequences will be.
I took away communism bad.